think we have failed as an industry. The information is out there for industry members to find, but it's not out there for the consumer. I raided the Hope Diamond a couple of times, and sitting in a very small room, I did get distracted for a moment thinking, this is such a piece of history. You're also looking at something that's probably a couple billion years old. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. So it's the oldest thing you'll ever touch. The difference between laboratory-grown diamonds and natural diamonds, simply the origin of natural diamond, they have the chemistry and the hardness, etc., the same. People say, no, mining is bad, but the socioeconomic benefit from it is versus, say, synthetic diamond as an example. My ultimate message is be accurate in what you share with consumers and tell the story about gems and jewelry. And I think it's a formula for success.
Welcome to another episode of the Jewellery Pod. I'm your host Krishna, and this podcast is podcast of all. Today we would be hearing direct from the horse's mouth what are the parameters of diamonds we should, as consumer or flag bearer of this industry, should be using. Right terminology, right sentiments, and just everything right about the industry that is growing at really fast pace. But what my concern is, and me as Jewellery Pod trying to build over here, is a narrative that wrong information should not circulate and should be imbibed by the consumers. It's not only fatal, but it is suicidal for the industry. And for that particular reason, I have got no one but Tom Moses, Executive VP of GIA, on this platform just to demystify everything that we have learned and saw and we are trying to absorb. Welcome, Tom, on the Jewellery Pod. It's my honor to have you here, and thank you so much for graciously accepting the invite.
Thanks, pleasure to be here, and always interested in talking about gemstones and gemology.
So from where do we start? Your association, the long association with GIA, and what I'm most happy about is that so you're not only having the top position in GIA, but you have been actively in the research lab as well, working behind the scenes. So there's a lot to cover in very short time, and I would leave that to you from where you began.
Well, great. Again, thanks for having me. And you're right. I've had, I started in the 1970s, so I think that's touching 6 or 7 different decades over the time, and I've seen the GIA's scope of research has evolved so much, and analyzing gem materials down to, I never imagined that we'd be able to count impurities down to parts per billion accurately in gem materials, and techniques that didn't exist when I started. So when I began, we had a couple of simple spectrometers, and most of the decisions were made from basic gemological testing and studying inclusions and really visual observations. And I think there's still an important place for that. So the human expertise in processing and putting the pieces of the puzzle together for gem identification or for treatment. Of course, we have endorsed and embraced AI, machine learning. It's been a big part of our work today, collaborated with, we have 22 or 23 PhDs and a team of amazing technicians, and then blended with a team of gemologists, and I think that's what makes GIA unique in this space, and I'm just both grateful and proud to have been a part of it for now approaching, I'm afraid to say, close to 50 years. But it's been an amazingly exciting period, a learning period. I guess in my early days, perhaps the first decade, I thought one day that I would master this field. And I'm running out of time, but I also realize I don't think I will ever master it. It's an ongoing learning process.
That's a supreme humility to say that. If we start talking about diamonds, GIA, parameters, and what's going on currently, there's no going back. But can I have some time of yours to throw some light about how you started? Was it a family thing? Does this interest you? Because I rarely get anyone from my circle telling, hey, I want to join diamond industry, Either you're thrown in the industry or you're imbibed. So what was your story?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in a family business. My father started a retail business in the U.S. in the 1940s after he came back from World War II, serving in the military. And he started a very humble beginning, fixing jewelry and repairs, and grew to a small chain of stores and diversified into other retail businesses like greeting cards, and had a part-time with partners in a factory and creating ceramic parts for electronics. So he was quite an innovative person. But jewelry was that was his real focus. The other things were something to invest in, something to do. And I recall it was as a teenager in the late 60s, that's when he first, of course, asked myself and my brother, to come in and start. The chores then were not quite as exciting as what I've been doing recently, like cleaning glass and vacuuming the floor and those kind of things. I went to university, studied geology, and that really, gave me even a deeper appreciation for the gemstones that we were selling at the time. And it's so interesting. I remember coming back from GI after completing the courses, and I'd look at certain stones like, wow, that's really good. And I must say, I also had a reaction with some of them were not so good. And I rejoined my family business for about a year. And then the head of the GI, Richard Lidicote, at the time, contacted me and asked if I would consider joining. It was a very small organization then, about a total of, I think it was about 90 people in New York at that time and in California. Today we're well over 3,000 students. I've seen that transformation, which is amazing to watch. So yeah, I started in a laboratory. I think there were 7 of us, and to give you an example, our lab in Bombay, I think we have 1,400 people in that lab. So it's been exciting, challenging, needing to continually learn new things, which is also both exciting and challenging. So yes, it's been an amazing journey, and especially having the opportunity to talk to you today, it does make me reflect. There aren't too many more years forward. Most of those are behind me now. So now is the time when you kind of think back and stop for moments like this and think about them.
But that's a legacy. That's this enviable legacy that you're holding, and we all, as industry members, are super proud of it. I have shortlisted few questions for this podcast that are from the audience. So we are often asked how 4Cs came into the picture. Being in the formation and foundation years of the lab, what was the emergence? What led to GIA to launch these terminology of 4Cs?
So interesting question. Somebody asked me about that recently. And so the 4Cs, GI created those in I think it was the mid-1940s, early to mid. I remember my mentor, I mentioned his name, Richard Lidicote, who is the founder of those and the creator. And at the time, in the industry, the grading systems were, of course, A was considered a kind of a top grade. But what happened, though, competing vendors who were selling diamonds would say, well, if yours was A, I'm going to make mine double A. And then somebody said, no, I'll make mine triple A.
Yeah.
So imagine, as a retailer, in particular at that time, you're going to 3 different vendors, and I want a top quality, and one says A, and one says AAA, and one says AA, and there was confusion. So as an education organization, Mr. Lidicote thought, look, I'm going to create a system that the students of GIA, my students that he's teaching, could use the standard system GIA has created and compare. Is really the AAA better than the single A, et cetera? But I think the funny part of the story was he chose D as the top color. But he, kind of simple but clever, no one will ever copy that, because in the United States, getting a D grade in school would be considered terrible, a negative thing. So he believed no one would say, well, okay, I'll make a double D or triple D or something. And so it was a very simple thing for students to use. So that was the beginning. And then in the early 1950s, some of those students started coming to GIA and saying, oh, look, I have these 2 diamonds. I'm buying from different vendors, and they're saying, can you grade them for me? And that's how, two, Mr. Lecote and another Bob Crowningshield, they were the 2 kind of stalwarts, and even today they're viewed that way as probably the 2 most important people at GIA in its history. They would grade the stones, write them down on a slip of paper, and that ultimately consummated the sale. Mm-hmm. It really removed the debate. This was now, okay, this is what it is, and then the price was the price. I'm getting just what, I'm getting the top quality. Because the terms used in the trade then were also blue, white, and perfect. That would now then translate, well, okay, it's D-flawless, so I'm honoring the purchase price, etc. That word started to spread. So some of the dealers in America were selling to people in Europe, and so the European dealers heard about GIA too and had taken a class. They said, well, look, I'll buy it, but you first have to get GIA to to grade it. And as the expression goes, it's all history from there. I mean, it just started off slowly. I would say it was probably a decade and a half before the industry really started to adopt it. And but I would say mid to late 1960s, it was becoming
a norm.
Yeah, the norm, the de facto standard. The thing I often think about, it's easy in hindsight. There was no discussion about brands then, as you well know, in the last 20 years, everybody wants to create a brand, or I want to be a brand, or so none of that existed, but his vision and the implementation created a brand that organic is natural. He didn't try. So those are always the strongest kind of brands. And it was creating the standard and then supported it through ongoing education, providing master sets, so a set of diamonds that the industry could use and then repeat the same grades that GI was getting. They had the same standard, the same ruler or yardstick in their hands. So I believe it really helped the industry grow, and it created trust. And what's perhaps the most important single word in our industry?
It did definitely.
Is trust.
It was set by GIA to begin with, and it was followed by all other players. And what built authority for GIA? Was it education, or it was grading of diamonds?
So clearly it's education, and I would still say it's the most important thing we do. But when I began at the 70s, and education was the driver. It was the driver of the revenue of GI too. That changed dramatically over the decades. I would say it's still the most important arm, but it's not driving the revenue anymore. Fortunately, it's that lab, and we say, I think in a nonprofit, it's not a profit that we make, it's a net revenue. It allowed for the more diamonds we graded, the more we could invest in research and education. And that is what fueled, and still does today, fuel GIA. Education loses money. GIA has the largest repository of gems and jewelry books and information in the world.
Yes.
And that came about through our lab services, testing pearls, grading diamonds, identifying colored gemstones. So it really has allowed for GIA to have this real important purpose. And I often say, what does GIA sell? We're really selling trust. We are educating jewelers and those in the industry who, when talking with consumers across the counter, they can talk accurately, they can talk precisely, which that translates into their success. There's a confidence the consumer buys. So ultimately, I said we sell trust, kind of thing. Or our report allows, as the example I use, it allows for two people to consummate a deal, and it's an honor really to serve in that way. It's a big responsibility and that part I never thought about, was the responsibility part. Over the years, and I reflect on a case, I graded the Hope Diamond a couple of times. And the first time, it hadn't been out of the setting since Harry Winston donated to the Smithsonian, I think 1960. And they brought it to his office in New York because they hadn't seen it loose, and they asked us to come to the Winston's office. And a few of us went to do the grading, and sitting in a very small room with a very large man standing behind me the whole time, which I wasn't used to. In the lab, there's nobody standing around looking over your shoulder. He was quiet, but intently watching. And it didn't, I was so locked in, it didn't really matter grading it. But I did get distracted for a moment thinking, this is such a piece of history with such a story behind it. And in addition to that, it's arguably priceless, kind
Were
of
you
thing.
intimidated?
Pardon? Was I intimidated? At that moment, yeah. I mean, normally, you have to just focus in, and yeah, I got a little and then I snapped out of it and got back to doing my job. But that's, I don't know, 30 years ago or something, and I remember I started to get a little...
That's something to look back
a
and
little shaky today, thinking about it. And I've had the opportunity to, again, many other kind of historical diamonds, the Agra, the Koh-i-Noor, there are just so many, and important. Elizabeth Taylor's the Paglina pearl. Just so many things that I've had the chance to handle. And you think, and I remember her pearl had, a couple pretty deep scratches, and I had heard rumors that her dog chewed on it once. So, and the Hope Diamond, the woman who owned it and donated it, and the true stories, she used to have her nephews or grandchildren come to visit her, and she would hide it in the garden so they could search for it and hide and seek kind of thing. So the stories behind these incredible things, and now you feel like in some ways silently you've become part of the story, and GIA put its stamp on it, that kind of thing.
You love that.
And yeah, there's it's a pride, but also there's a humility in being able to handle such important, kind of pieces of history. And I think it all, what I watched happen in my tenure was the more we did, the more we could do. Meaning, we have good scholarship, we have an endowment fund. You give students, a number of students on a regular basis, the opportunity to learn. So it's like this engine that's fueling knowledge, because the more we see, the more we learn. There's this net revenue that we can put into research and create scholarships, and it feels then like an organization of purpose, or that mission is the word I guess often used. I think purpose is, I think that is more kind of targeted and precise. There's something good that can come out of the work that we're doing. Either seeing someone come in and change careers and learn about diamonds and gemstones, and that helps them, become successful, and then they are able to do more, and so on. And I've watched that story kind of over and over. So it's a unique institute, and I just was, as I often say, I was in the right place at the right time, kind of.
I'm intrigued to know that you handled and graded Koh-i-Noor. How you felt that time? What color grade it is?
As I recall, it was D-color. Yeah, it looked like this. Again, you read the history and you start, as I said, at times it enters into your mind while you're handling it. But I must say, it usually didn't.
It came as mounted or as a loose stone?
Loose, yeah. And at times, I think, interestingly enough, those thoughts of its history and lore and story didn't really hit me till, I really think about them later but once you have it in your hands, the microscope, there's you lock into what the task at hand is. And, often looking into those big diamonds, I would envision myself climbing into them almost and exploring every micron, every few microns of depth and in and out and around, looking for its, not only what I would say its inclusions, its story. Could you see anything that's related to its growth, or is it something unique that you hadn't seen? And of course, most of these originated from India at the time too. So you're looking at history, but you're also looking at something that's probably a couple billion years old. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. So it's the oldest thing you'll ever touch. And, something we have done with some of the more modern, very important diamonds. Think about this. The inclusions that are encased, that are entombed or preserved, are a sample of the Earth from 2, 3, could be 400, 500 miles beneath the surface. That is the only way anyone can ever understand the composition of the Earth. So our scientists, we carefully remove those inclusions or polish down to the inclusion. And remember, they've been totally preserved, encapsulated in pressure and temperature. So it's truly, from when they were entombed, nothing changed to them. They didn't alter over time. They were protected until we unlock that secret. So with our analytical capabilities and our great team of scientists, we're able to now shed some light on what was going on in the Earth 2 billion years ago.
That's a lot to even imagine, let alone that you've handled and seen and observed up close all these things right happening around you. So it's about what we are talking about, what you have just shared is about a great legacy that could not be repeated or could not be replicated by anyone else, but GIA has done it and proved to the world. Tom, with all those publications and great books and huge research, do you think is there any still a narrative that's missing from the industry? Something that you believe very personally or deeply that, there are thousands of publications, there are great books, but why no one is still covering this particular topic?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we, GIA, I don't think we've done well enough. We need to tell more than you and me.
Uh-huh.
Because I think consumers, the public, would be so interested to hear this. And remember, the 1 carat or 75-point diamond they're wearing may have the same inclusion in it. And to know what they're wearing, something that's a couple of billion years old, it's a sample of the Earth's mantle, and there's an emotion attached to it. And it may not sound that way, and I'm certainly not an expert about pricing, but I think I've understood the prices have decreased. But if one looks at, the pricing over 40 or 50 years, because, I gave my wife a 1 carat diamond, whatever, close to 50 years ago. It wasn't some great diamond, but again, she's been able to wear it and I think enjoy it she'll give it to my daughter or something, and it has value. The value much more than, what I had paid for it. And it's not a significant amount of money. It's only a simple 1 carat diamond. But, what can you wear, enjoy, have an emotional attachment to, have it for decades, and pass it on to someone and transfer those emotions. But in the worst case, somebody can, sell it, and if they need something. And I think that's what the story of natural diamond has, many branches to it, that that I think are not well told, and I think we have failed as an industry because I think we take a lot for granted. We take it as just whatever, or just trading paper or so take away what's they got kind of thing, and as opposed to, when I talk to colleagues younger, and I think they all are, one of the things I remind them of, and I still try to. Yes, we've talked about grading, these famous diamonds, but I try to look at, on occasion, I'm not doing this on a daily basis anymore, but if somebody asks me to look at, a half-carat diamond, I try to look at it with the same exact feeling and intensity and focus as any other one. Because whoever's going to get that, it has the same value to them as the Koh-i-Noor, the Hope Diamond, kind of thing. So, and I encourage that thinking at GIA, and certainly my mentors, it was very clear that's how they looked at things, and that's it's the only way I knew to do things, and I think it clearly was the right way. But as I said, fortunately, I was in the right place at the right time.
And having said that, if you can add what could be done, when you said it's not enough has been done, I do assume that you're talking about research is done, it's there in the books, and it's there for the people who are interested or probably know about the industry or may want to make a livelihood out of this industry or diamonds or education. So do you mean to say that it's not out enough for the public, it's not out enough for the consumers as the right information?
Yeah, I think you summarized it well. The information is out there for industry members to find, but it's not out there for the consumer. When I've watched people look at gemstones, they're fascinated by them. You can see whether it's a color they like, whether I like amethyst, or I like tourmaline, or I like spinel, or, because it's dynamic. Light interacts with them, and there's this play going on that they're seeing, and it's captivating. But imagine adding some of these other pieces that we've just talked about to that story.
And let alone, Tom, the stones and their appearances and feeling them in hand. Just their stories are so intriguing that I don't know if they are just released in a more interactive way, people will go crazy. And this is what I'm trying to do, trying to find a balance between information and education. And I really don't want to make it very entertaining towards an influencing side, but this is what I'm trying with the Jewellery Pod. I always say unlearn and adapt. In day passing, and with every episode, I'm endeavoring to make a conversation where someone very random not from the industry can come and just listen to the narrative, what we are talking about, and can grab some good information. And the core is to unlearn. We don't need any more researches probably. We need more right mouth and right channels talking about the industry. And over here I'm talking about only right information.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I read something recently, and I may not get all the facts right, but I think it was one of the great brands. I think it was Hermes, but I don't know. But they talked about a new person stitching the bags. They do 2 or 3 years of practice before they're allowed to touch the ones that are going into production. So that's storytelling. When I now think of this bag, I think, well, it's expensive, but I can see why. I would like to have that too, that I know that person practiced for years and years stitching to get it just right. Mm-hmm. And the parallel is a lot of what we just talked about. How do we get the same kind of, and that, what a gemstone like tanzanite found in the 1960s in Tanzania changed the lives of many people there. So Tiffany coins the name, takes the stone, brands it, and it becomes ubiquitous at some point. And remember that source is the benefits it's made to many people. So, but that story you can tell that story over and over, whether it's in East Africa or Madagascar or wherever. Now, with that comes responsibility that we as an industry make sure the people are treated properly all through supply chain. And I think we're paying attention. Certainly the brands are really focused on that today. So I think that's something we could do much better on too. And he'd hold each other in the supply chain accountable.
It is. If we see internally as industry person, as industry representative, we know that a lot of good is happening around. It's just about it's not out enough for the public to see what good we are doing as an industry, as diamond industry, as mining, as color stone mining, as sustainability. It's just about more and more right channels need to speak about it. And having said that, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, information of the industry, irrespective of topic, spreads faster than right information.
Correct, unfortunately. Correct. Yeah. I just, kind of a final point I want to make. I was in Angola last week, and I was so impressed. The schools, the health clinics, the benefits that the community has accrued for natural diamond. Same in Botswana, which I've been going there for nearly 20 years. The highways, the hospitals, the education is free. No one knows that, kind of thing. And I think that should be something, not only we tell the story, but how do we even do more of that. I was so pleased to see that. And it's a young country as far as, it I think became independent in 1975. So they're, still teething and learning and that kind of thing, but I was deeply impressed. And how they were moving to having solar panels and solar farm to power the factories and so on. And, because people say, no, mining is bad, but the socioeconomic benefit from it is versus, say, synthetic diamond as an example. There's none of that goes on. There's a factory, they grow them and polish them, and there's none of that collateral benefit. And it has, I'm personally in GIA is neutral. I mean, we don't, whatever it is, we just do the job. So
I see GIA always as industry agnostic.
Yeah.
There are no publication bashing lab-grown diamonds or what I love that you set a tone for the industry and it is followed silently like a school principal who just sets a tone for the morning assembly. That's how I see GIA as. But at the same time, it's very less known to the people that GIA is also growing lab-growns. And then also I love that GIA has set a terminology when it was launched as a official publication. It created a stir in whole of the industry, and there were mixed responses, but everything has its own pros and cons. Who would be better than you to explain that?
Yeah, I did get some hate mail from that too, yes. We made that terminology change for laboratory-grown diamonds, and looking at glossary, I was influenced by and informed by the glossary for quality terms used to describe manufactured products. And we chose premium and standard. So we have two categories, so premium being VVS plus and D-color, and standard anything below that. If you think about other products you buy, some clothing manufacturers have, the branded, and then they have seconds, or they call it something, and they sell that somewhere else, or it sells for less. And philosophically, that makes perfect sense.
Can you still call them diamonds, or they should be referred as synthetic diamonds?
In the United States, the terminology that is the Federal Trade Commission has mandated for many years, although it has expanded. It started out many decades ago as just synthetic, which was the original, and I could arguably say the correct term. GI had nothing to do with it, and no one else in the gem industry did. It was a chemist in France in the late 1800s who produced the first synthetic ruby, and I have the book on my desk. So that set the tone, and it was perfectly fine. And throughout the decades, then GIA added some additional terms, working with the Federal Trade Commission and others. So it was synthetic, and then the next man-made. General Electric used man-made when they introduced synthetic in their man-made diamonds in 1950s. And then laboratory grown was a more current term, and I don't know if you remember Chatham Emeralds. That became, he's the one, you could call it Chatham Emerald, maker created. So Chatham created could be, so those are the four terms: maker created, man-made, laboratory grown, and synthetic.
India also released something similar. It has clear terminology to refer diamonds and lab grown. So Is it the same, or are we following the same school of thoughts?
Yeah, we're following the same standard terms by Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission, in a recent amendment, said they thought there's less consumer confusion with laboratory grown. So we're using that on our reports, but when we're doing our research and work, we use the terms interchangeably. And any research production, synthetic is the term used because it goes back, 130 years of that usage. What I always have found, and going back to my little experience in retail, it's just telling the truth to a consumer. A consumer has a very simple question when you're showing these two things. So one is real and one is not, right? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when you try and cloud it with, it's same, but it's identical, but it's not identical, or we couldn't tell the difference. So, you asked the question earlier, and I say anything we do with communication, with learning, we try to provide context to the consumer. They don't want you to tell them in a book. How do I tell? What's the elevator facts? I'll call it the elevator facts in 30 to 100 seconds. And this is a man-made diamond with virtually the same physical and optical, characteristics, made in a lab. But it will wear like a natural diamond. It has the same brilliance and fire, and it's X price. And here's the natural one. It's 1 billion years old, and here's the two stories. And there was nothing in there that's negative about either one. And they may ask a follow-up question. Does this have value? I can tell you, no, it's been falling. And historically, all I can tell you is history in the past, man-made products have devalued over a long period of time. But it's the same way with any technology. If a television, the latest one, and then 6 months later, you think, wow, it's half price. And it's similar. It's a technology.
But I have to admit, you have got great sales skills. I would buy from you if you sell to me.
Well, thank you. It's funny you ask on a closing note. I did for many years while I was working at GIA. No moonlighting, supposed to say, but I want to moonlight. I'm going to go to my family's business, especially around the holidays, and see if I can sell something. I want to understand this connection between the consumer and gemstones. So that would inform me what should be on our reports. What's the right context, for them.
That was a retail side of the lab grown and natural diamonds. Thank you for sharing that on this space. And do you want to share something about GIA doing its own lab grown diamonds? What was the need? Why it came into the picture?
When GIA does its research, the very best research you can do is what I refer to as 360. And by that I mean if we grow it, we test it, we treat it, as opposed to let's go buy some synthetic diamonds from 10 companies and analyze them. We sometimes still don't know the secrets. We might know 90%, but how do you know 100%? You just do it yourself. And that's why, and think of our story. We want to have the deepest understanding of gem materials. We want to, at the same time, understand treatment, enhancement of gem materials. So you better do that too.
So this is research leading to business, or it is still very research-oriented?
It's research-oriented so that our reports have the best results, the most accurate results we can provide. And as you know, we have a pillar GIA that builds instruments for jewelers to use. We want to make sure those instruments work and that they're the best possible. So I'm proud to say, the simple instruments we developed 7 or 8 years ago is ID100, just for screening natural from synthetic diamond. And it will not pass any synthetic diamonds.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, but to make sure, we want to try to trick this device. So we. That's the purpose for growing. It's expensive, these things, to do. They're very expensive, but remember, trust. We're trying to sell trust.
And Tom, if given under a minute, how would you explain to people coming from not from the industry, just very basic random, anyone who's interested to know about diamond, under 1 minute, how would you explain a difference between lab grown and natural?
The difference between laboratory grown diamonds and natural diamonds, simply the origin of natural diamond formed deep within the earth in the mantle over likely thousands or millions of years. Man-made diamonds, or as the expression goes, they are made, grown in a factory or laboratory over a period of days or weeks. They have the chemistry and the hardness, etc., are the same, but they have distinctive differences with their growth and atomic level defects, so we're quickly able to separate them. Historically, natural diamonds, due to rarity, appreciate in time, and man-made gemstones historically devalue in time. So I think in a simple way, that's how I would describe them differently. I would add one thing. They're both beautiful.
I love how agnostic and neutral you are towards this thing, and I see them as inevitable part of the industry, and I honestly have nothing against them. What I really cannot withstand is a misinformation. Anyone telling me or selling it at obnoxious pricing is a terrible practice. And even any publication saying or claiming it is as good as natural diamond is terrible practice. It's something that industry should come together and probably act upon it. Is GIA doing anything about circulation of misinformation, or you're very much into your lane? And
we try to correct it. We work very closely in the United States with the federal, with Jewelers Vigilance Committee, which is an organization that polices the industry for misinformation. So they bring things to us and we say, yes, you're right or wrong, or yes, this is incorrect, and then they enforce. They can go to businesses who are misusing information and change them. You said something that's important. I think the thing I worry about most is the misrepresentation, either in value or rarity, or the damage that it, one at some point will accrue to not just the person who sold it, but it'll be a reflection on our industry. So I think you're right. Due diligence is so necessary at this time. And again, there are two products that there's a place for both of them, but let's just make sure, where they stay in their lanes too, and not trying to commingle through puffery or through exaggerations, or worse, misinformation.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing that with us. And talking about GIA as an organization and ACE Institute for Education and Information, what we could expect in coming years or near future?
I mentioned earlier is the advances in automation and so on, and we have worked significantly over the last 10 years. We partnered with the Watson Group at IBM to help us with auto clarity grading, probably the world leader in AI. This was 2017, I think, so we're now approaching 8 years on this project with them. And the reason for it, we grade pretty many diamonds and gemstones each year, but I'm greedy to handle more. Not because I'm greedy for greedy's sake. The more we do, the more trust we can create. And so but you now have to find a way to do, very tiny stones for a price that makes sense. And that's where we're headed. You can, much of what we worked on in the last decade is to handle, and a lot of that is rolling out more and more now into practice, where 10 or 15 point diamonds can be graded and identified and graded and all that very quickly and efficiently and cost effectively. Because as I said to you earlier, the person buying that deserves the same integrity in the report as the one buying a 5 carat. In our view, it's as important to them. So I think there's a lot going on at GIA in that, and utilizing the tools of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and partnering with an IBM. How can you find a better partner than that?
No, that's awesome. That's all. I'm really looking forward to this collab and what we get to see it in tangible form. I know it's unreasonable to ask. You have spent whole of your life around diamonds and amazing research that is unparalleled. If not diamonds, or if not GIA, what's your passion? What you're really passionate about?
Gosh, it's a great question, and I think I can answer that pretty clearly. I'm fascinated by kind of business and business theory and strategy. And that's kind of my spare time, reading financial things, but more business strategy. I think I'm really intrigued with, and I that would be it. I would have followed that pursuit. Strangely enough, I'm at a stage where I hope one day have even more time to read about it. It'd be too late for me to do anything contribute to it, but just to read and understand more of it. But yeah, I would answer your question now.
You already did a lot, and we adore your work. Irrespective, and there's so many things that I have not yet covered, but I believe we're running out of time. What would be your ultimate message to the industry as Tom Moses?
I think my ultimate message is be accurate in what you share with consumers and tell the story about gems and jewelry. And I think it's a formula for success.
Thank you, Tom. That was deep.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks.
It was an amazing conversation. We covered so many topics, and I'm so glad we could discuss something else about GIA, and it was lovely to know the other side of you. Thank you again for sparing your time with us.
Thank you. Maybe we'll pick up another conversation someday.
Hopefully
Thank you.
soon.
Yeah, thank you
again.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around with us. I do hope this was a value addition to your time. We endeavor at the Jewellery Pod to bring such narratives. And in case you have found that we have not covered certain topic and it was imperative for you, please drop us in the comment and I would make sure to cover it in the next episode. Do share the feedback of this podcast. Interact with us on 7 different platforms. Every details is there in the caption. Do not forget to subscribe to the Jewellery Pod. Till we meet again, thank you.